You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
New Zealand into the home straight now. Gold medal. New Zealand. The Kiwis have won gold. They're powering through. New Zealand gold.
Weekend Sports Road to Paris 2024.
Yes, with the Olympics now just 4 days away, it's time for the final stop on our Road to Paris feature. We land in London 2012, where Sarah Walker became New Zealand's first and still only Olympic BMX medalist. Winning silver, she was second fastest in her qualifying ride, but only fourth fastest of the four in her semi-final that went through to the final. But in that final, she was outstanding.
Gate drops. We look for Walker out at gate 6 and she's made a cracking start. Walker over the top. Pajon again. Sarah Walker's up to second at the moment. Sarah Walker goes high on the berm. Whistles around. She's in second spot at the moment. She's behind the Colombian Pajon. Sarah Walker is in second spot. Here comes the French woman Poitier. Sarah Walker maintaining second spot at the moment. Pajon racing away. Up on the inside goes the Dutch woman. Sarah Walker fighting back. She's back up into second spot at the moment. Sarah Walker. She's riding behind the Colombian. Sarah Walker riding there behind. Final turn. Sarah Walker around the berm. It's going to be a straight sprint. Sarah Walker looking to try and get up the inside. Can't do it. Sarah Walker, silver!
Oh, what a call from Nigel Yolden, and Sarah Walker clocking a time of 38.113 seconds, claiming silver. She also competed in Beijing in 2008 when BMX made its Olympic debut. She placed fourth. She is a 12-time medalist at the BMX World Championships, and for the past 8 years, she's been a member of the IOC Athletes Commission, a role she'll relinquish after Paris 2024. Sarah Walker is with us. Sarah, your silver at London 2012 that we just heard there might not even have happened. Tell us about the crash that you had in April of 2012 in Norway, which resulted in a dislocated shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. We're in the final World Cup races leading into the games, and I had a pretty good race, but I was coming out down the second straight next to one of the American riders, and they made a mistake and crashed, and I had absolutely nowhere to go and hit them and dislocated my shoulder. So it was kind of frustrating because obviously I hadn't made the mistake, but I was the one that was injured, and it was 3 months out from the games, and I was just kind of like, okay, the only thing I need to know is, do I need surgery before now, or like, am I going to miss the games, or can I do something and do that later? And obviously I could do that later and focus on just rehabbing as well as possible and turn up on the start line as in good condition as I possibly could.
But you still had to qualify, is that right? You still hadn't qualified at that point. So
exactly.
in amongst all of that, so what, 6 weeks after that crash, World Champs in Birmingham, you had to qualify. So how challenging was it to get ready for that?
I think, in terms of my mindset, it was just like, that's the reality and that's what I have to do, so I'm going to go do it. So I went into the World Champs, and it was actually, I reckon it was perfect preparation for the Games, because the pressure on that World Champs was, if you perform, you go to the Olympics. If you don't even get to line up at the start line. So it was kind of a similar amount of pressure because of what the outcome of that race was. So I needed to perform to the best of my ability in that competition to even get selected for the game. So I think, perfect mental preparation, but very stressful.
Absolutely, I can imagine. What a dress rehearsal for you. Did fear of another crash play a part in your mindset as you were attempting to qualify for London?
There was a balance, because it was kind of, I wanted to turn up to London in the best shape I could possibly be, and I believed that even with that injury, I was good enough to be the best in the world at the Games. So it was kind of like, I could play it safe and give myself every chance of being on the start line and maybe not being competitive, but being there at least. Or I can just give my best every single day, do whatever I can to reduce the risk of hurting myself again, but turn up best prepared I could possibly be and give myself every chance of winning a gold medal. then like that was the kind of path that I could choose. And so, yeah, obviously I'd done the participation and finished fourth, and I was like, no, I believe I'm good enough and I'm going to aim for gold, and I'm going to reduce the risk where I can, but I'm going to take more risk than I would if I was just wanting to line up on the start, and that's all I was aiming for. So, yeah, gave it everything, and fortunately at those World Champs I did qualify.
Yeah, and got to London and the silver medal, as we know. I'm interested in they're very fine margins, I'm sure, between, you talk about the risks that you take. It can be just very tiny margins between those risks paying off, I'm sure, and then having the opposite effect of crashes like you've experienced. How big a mental game is that?
Yeah, it's huge. I tried track cycling for a couple of months, and I remember thinking how mentally or emotionally easy it is to do a sport where there's less risk. Like worst case scenario, I'm going to turn up to training or competition and I'm going to be really exhausted at the end of it, or if I push my body too hard I might throw up. And that's probably my worst case scenario. Where every single week at training and BMX and at competition, you don't know whether you're going to go home to your hotel or your home, or you're going to go to the hospital after racing and someone else is going to have to pack your bags, So the emotional piece is quite hard, but obviously a lot of years of practice of going and accepting that there is risk in what we do, but it's also extremely fun and enjoyable, and I love that sport so much that the good way outweighs the risk every time. But yeah, it is something you just have to work. Like I did a lot of work with a sports psychologist. I did 13 years with the same sports psych, and that was amazing in terms of just feeling the fear, which I think got more challenging as they got more injuries, but also going, okay, well, how do I reduce the risk? And if I'm afraid of crashing, then I'm not going to relax and ride the best that I can. So I need to accept that that's a possibility, but also staying on my bike is possible as well.
Yeah.
And all I can control is how I'm going to do my best start, how I'm going to pedal my hardest, how I'm going to do the nicest jump. And also if I do all of those things right, then the chances of crashing are way less. And so focusing on that and my process allowed me to kind of put my fear somewhat to the side and really just intently focus on what I needed to do and how I needed to perform those skills to be as safe as I could, and accept that there were things outside of my control, given that there's 8 people and no lanes.
Yeah, what great insight. So you crossed second. Silver is yours. How are the emotions? What are your most vivid memories of that?
I just, it was an insanely proud moment. I'd done a lot of work, again, with sports psych around, one of the biggest wins I had was believing in myself and believing that I was good enough and I was capable of winning. And the next step for that was actually going, okay, but it's all right if you don't win, as long as you have given it everything like you could. So at that finish line, I crossed, and I just knew that under the ultimate pressure of an Olympic final, I'd done my absolute best start that I could ever have done. And my first straight was incredible, and I raced the best race I could given the circumstance I was in. And so, yeah, crossing the finish line, I didn't achieve my goal of winning the gold, but because of all that mental work of going, I'm good enough to achieve it, but it's okay if I don't, because there's a lot of things that I can't control, and that includes my competitors. But in that one moment, in that 38 seconds, one person in the world was better than me, and that's absolutely okay because I rode my best race in that moment. So yeah, just pride, really. Pride for myself, pride for New Zealand, and just it was weird because I remember getting the Olympic medal around my neck on the podium, which is something that you kind of picture or hope for as an athlete for many, many years. And I remember thinking that the object of the medal wasn't as powerful as the feeling of pride that I had, and I was quite surprised by that. Like, I thought the object would mean more to me than it did, but the feeling of what I had was actually the overpowering thing.
That is so cool. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Of course, London was your second games, of course. You're in Beijing in 2008, just out of the medals in fourth. How do you reflect on Beijing?
I didn't believe in myself, I think, is the biggest reflection, and that was what we recognised and worked on for that next 4 years. But I kind of looked at it as most young Olympians do at their first games. Oh, I'm here for the experience. I'm aiming for the next one. I'll see what happens. But, you know, like, I could win a medal, but anything can happen. Like, kind of almost setting myself up to have reasons why it wouldn't work before I even took the start line, rather than just focusing on how do I turn up and do the best that I can, even though it's my first games, even though I'm young, or even though whatever. It's like, cool, all of those things. But actually, how do I get the best start I can? How do I do this jump as smooth as possible? How do I put myself in a position to get the best lines around the track, and like really focus on that process as much as possible? In reality, I was just like little 8-year-old me who dreamed of becoming an Olympian one day, just being like, I'm here, this is insane, this is so cool, it's so surreal, I'm like living a dream. And I was really, I don't know if you'd say distracted, but yeah, just focused on the fact that I was there rather than what I needed to do.
And then Rio 2016, you missed that one through injury. And then this is a roller coaster of a chat, I tell you. a training accident, February 2016. So how gutting not to make it to Rio?
Yeah, I think that was one of the hardest days I think that I've ever had as an athlete. Was the day I didn't qualify at the World Champs that year. The crash itself, I knew instantly that I'd done something bad. So I broke my humerus, which is upper arm bone, and did a pretty good job of it. But I knew immediately something was bad, because when I crashed and sat straight back up, I couldn't feel my arm at all. And through my history of breaking bones, I was like, okay, well, if my body's not giving me any signal from that part, I'm not going to look at which way this might be facing or what might be poking out where it shouldn't be. And but yeah, it was just kind of like ring an ambulance and we'll sort it out. But the recovery from that took like 3 years until I got the plates back out again. That it actually was much better. But you do what you can in the meantime and make the best of the situation. And I did everything I could to get ready and still qualify, but it just wasn't strong enough, and it actually caused me to have another crash and hurt my other shoulder because I was just pushing to try and make it. But I was just like, well, if there's still a 1% chance I could make it, then I'm gonna try. And so that was kind of my attitude. But yeah, I think it was hard because before that crash, in the weeks leading into that, it was the start of the season, heading into like Olympic year, and all of my testing, every single week I was doing personal best, and I was feeling good. I even had a note in one of my journals saying, like, I can't sleep because I just think of like how cool everything's going, and I'm just so excited. Oh. So rather than not sleeping through stress, I was not sleeping through excitement. And it was just what I was realizing, what I was truly capable in terms of physical performance and what was possible. And I really wanted to see what that meant when I lined up against other people, but never got the opportunity because of that crash.
Oh, man, this is a roller coaster. We've heard about Rio 2016 and how injury robbed you of the chance to compete there. What about Tokyo? Were the Tokyo Games on your radar?
Yes, yeah, it was. So I started Olympic qualifying. One of the races was a 2020 World Cup in Australia in February, and then came home to kind of continue the season, and then obviously COVID arrived on the world's doorstep and really stopped the international travel and being able to go to races and get points and try and qualify. Well, New Zealand managed to get a spot, but in terms of selection, just not going to any races besides that one race. It came down to that one race, and myself and Rebecca Petch, who went to the Tokyo Games for BMX, were pretty much similar results. And I think given that she's 10 years younger and I was towards the end of my career, I think they started looking for the future and they took her, and she did amazing. And I was just stoked to see New Zealand on the start line at the Olympics again in BMX for the girls. So, yeah, it was a bit rough, but it was kind of like one of my goals was when I finished riding that I still love what I do and I still love my sport, because a lot of people who dedicate like 10, 15, 20 years to a sport just want a break and just want to kind of sometimes never do that sport again. But I really wanted to like go through that last Olympic cycle to Tokyo and know that I did it because it was a cool sport and I loved doing it. But you don't know for sure if that's your actual truth or whether you're lying to yourself until you're in a situation where you're like, well, did you do it because you loved it, or did you do it just because you want to go to another Olympics? And so when I didn't make the team, it was like, all right, were you telling the truth to yourself, or were you trying to pretend? And the first thing I did was put on all my gear and go for a ride at the track. So, like, even though I hadn't qualified, I was really proud of myself that I had achieved that next block or Olympic cycle on my bike, doing what I love, and that it made the Olympic team. Of course, it would have been amazing and the cherry on top, but it wasn't my core why I was riding. And yeah, I'm really glad I actually did that Olympic cycle, because I made the podium at a World Cup late 2018 in Argentina, and that was just like this kind of justification that I'm still one of the best in the world and that I was right to keep believing in myself, even though others may have been questioning like my age or my injuries or whatever. So that was, quite a satisfying moment.
I bet. So are you at peace with your elite career? Because as I mentioned, it's had its peaks and troughs. It's been a roller coaster, to use a couple of cliches. Are you at peace with it? I'm really, really proud that I'm at peace with it. Like, I didn't feel, even after the Rio cycle, when I committed to Tokyo, it wasn't like I need to keep going because I feel like there's unfinished business. It was, I want to keep going because I love it. And with the benefit of hindsight, being able to go, that was authentic and genuine, and that there doesn't feel like anything that I left that I didn't achieve that I wanted to or whatever. It's really nice. So yes, definitely had peace with my whole career and the journey that I had, and even through the injuries and the setbacks, it was all part of that journey, and it's really cool. And during during the Rio Games, even though you couldn't compete, it was announced you'd been elected onto the IOC Athletes Commission for an 8-year term, which, as I mentioned at the start of the chat, concludes after the upcoming Paris Games. So what has that work involved for you over the last 8 years?
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I remember being at home, and obviously with Rio, it was quite a big time difference. But I said to Eliza McCartney, actually, it was her first Olympics, and I said, if you wake up on competition day and you just are overwhelmed by the fact that it's the day, which I would totally understand, I've been there, if you need to ring me, just ring me. I'll leave my phone on loud overnight and just ring. So my phone went off at 2 a.m. in the morning. It was the only day that I left my phone on loud. And answer the phone thinking it's going to be Eliza, and it was actually the head of the athletes department at the IOC saying, "Hey, Sarah, like, you need to be awake because the IOC president's going to call you soon."
Oh, wow.
I was like, "Oh, all right, I'm awake. So I remember sitting, just staring at my phone, waiting for this phone call, and at 5 a.m., 3 hours later, I finally get the call, which is like obviously exciting, but I was so wired for that 3 hours. Get the call being like, "Yeah, we want you to be on the Athletes Commission, but in order to get on the Athletes Commission this year, you need to be in Rio tomorrow."
Oh, wow.
So you need to be on the next flight out of New Zealand to Brazil so that you can become part of the IOC as an athlete representative. And so, yeah, drove, got my passport, drove to the airport, flew out on the very next flight. And, yeah, the rest is history, but it's been so cool. So basically, I was pretty overwhelmed to start with about all the different things the Olympic Committee do and all the different initiatives and cool things that they're involved with, all the different departments. And, yeah, I think I was initially just thought there was no way I'd be able to ever understand all of it. But like my sport, I just focused on giving my best that I had each day and each time that we had meetings and contributing where I can. But yeah, over time I learnt more and got better and could positively impact the athlete experience of being at the Olympics and the athlete experience in general of between games as well. And it's been very, very rewarding to be able to be part of those decisions that the IOC make that impact the athletes' lives, you know?
Yeah, what a cool thing. What a cool thing to be able to do. So where is your silver medal? Where do you keep it?
I think I think it's in a cupboard, and I think I know which cupboard. But yeah, it's very worn. The ribbon is tatty, and the medal has some dents in it. But like, I love that because I shared it with as many people in schools. So as many kids basically as I could when I got home from the games, and got every kid that wanted to put it around their neck and get a photo, like just as many hands on it as possible, because I think the first time I held an Olympic medal was at Beijing Olympics. And it had already been a massive goal of mine anyway, but to hold a medal, just I felt like so inspired at Beijing, and now I could share that with as many people as possible, so I did. And so it's it's a little worse for wear, and it's sitting somewhere. And I'm sure if I went looking for it, I would find it. but like I said, the medal itself as an object became a symbol of how I felt. But the feeling, even to this day, 12 years later, still is stronger than the medal itself and the object. I don't need to hold the medal to be reminded of the pride that I had on that day. But maybe in the future, when a few more years pass, I'll bring it out so that I can look at it and be reminded more often. But at the moment, it's still, I don't know, it seems it feels fresh enough that I don't need it out to get that feeling, you know?
Yeah, I do. Well, it feels like the medal's been bumped and bruised a bit and knocked around and a bit worse for wear, but still shining bright, no doubt, which seems like a nice little analogy to you as well. It's
True.
Yeah, Sarah, it's been such a delight to chat to you. Thank you for being so authentic with a chat about your BMX career. It's been such a cool 20 minutes chatting to you. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Sarah Walker there. Silver medalist, London 2012, and the final stop on our road to Paris.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.